Welcome, dear horror listener. You're tuning into Horror Radio, and I'm truly grateful you're here. Whether you're a long-time listener or just stumbled upon this channel, thank you for joining me for another scary tale. If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow and means more than you know. I'd also love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from, what brought you here, or even what kind of story you'd like to hear next. Your support keeps this channel going, and I appreciate each and every one of you. Now, let's get into today's horror story. I used to stop at the same subway every morning before work. It was one of those half-dead ones tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop on the south end of Minneapolis. Not exactly unsafe, but not the kind of place you'd hang around after dark either. I park out front, grab a breakfast sandwich, and sit by the window to wake up before walking to the clinic 2 blocks away. My name's Aaron. I'm a registered nurse, and at the time, I just started a new position at a long-term care center. Early shifts were brutal. I wasn't a morning person, so caffeine and routine became survival. That subway became part of the rhythm. Same cashier, same booth, same sad jazz music playing through a busted speaker by the soda fountain. It was ordinary, comforting even, until it wasn't. That morning started like any other. I got there just after 6:30, when the place had only a couple of customers inside. The guy making sandwiches knew my order by heart: a bacon egg white flatbread with spinach and a Diet Coke. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering near the drink machine like always. I remember thinking how gray everything looked. The sky outside, the tile floor, even the bread in the display case. It was a quiet morning, the kind that makes you zone out and go on autopilot. I sat in the corner booth by the window, scrolling through emails, trying to ignore the ache behind my eyes from another night of too little sleep. That's when I noticed the man sitting near the back. He was Artemis, mid-40s, maybe, wearing a heavy army green jacket that looked like it hadn't been washed in months. He had a laptop open on the table, surrounded by 2 overstuffed black garbage bags. One was torn, and I could see clothes spilling out, socks, a folded blanket, maybe a towel. The kind of setup you recognize instantly when you live in a city long enough. At first, I didn't pay much attention. Minneapolis has its share of unhoused people who come in to warm up. Usually, they keep to themselves. But this man wasn't alone. Across from him sat a woman. She was large, probably late 50s, hair pulled into a messy bun, layers of sweaters hanging off her shoulders. Something about her posture seemed fragile. Shoulders rounded, eyes unfocused, hands trembling slightly as she stirred a cup of coffee that looked mostly like milk. They didn't seem like a couple, but they had some kind of connection, one that I couldn't read at first. She kept looking at him, like she needed permission to breathe. I sipped my drink and tried to ignore them, but then his voice broke through the quiet like a siren. "Don't let them play me. You know how I get," he said loudly, staring down his laptop. "You know how I get." I glanced up. His tone shifted mid-sentence, from anger to laughter to something almost like pleading. It wasn't directed at anyone in particular. Maybe he was on a call, though I didn't see an earpiece. His voice carried across the room, filling the empty spaces between the soda machine and the smell of bread. "See, they think I won't," he said, smirking at the screen. Then, without missing a beat, "But I will. I'll make sure they understand." A few people at nearby tables exchanged looks, but no one said anything. The cashier, a kid barely out of high school, just wiped the counter with nervous eyes. I told myself to mind my business, but it's hard to shut off the part of your brain trained to read warning signs. The tremor in his hands, the pacing tone, the way his eyes darted back and forth too fast. He slammed the laptop shut suddenly, the sound sharp enough to make the woman flinch. Then he stood up, straightened his jacket, and walked directly toward me. "Hey," he said, "you work at the hospital, right?" It took me a second to realize he was talking to me. I looked down at my scrubs and my badge clipped near my collar. Yeah, I said cautiously. His eyes brightened, the kind of manic light that's equal parts relief and danger. Perfect, he said. You can help. I froze halfway through my bite of sandwich. Help out, he motioned to the woman at the table. She's in a facility, a nursing home, he said with contempt, spitting the word like poison. They've been hurting her. You wouldn't believe what they've done. I checked her out for the day, and now we're to talk to a lawyer. Right, Denise? The woman, Denise, apparently, nodded weakly. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. She's got bed sores all over her legs, the man continued. They won't treat her right. You're a nurse, you know how it is. You people don't care about anyone unless they've got insurance. I blinked, unsure what to say. I'm sorry that happened, I said quietly. But if she has open sores, she should really be in a hospital, not. Before I could finish, he yanked out his phone and started scrolling furiously. No, look, I'll show you, he said, voice trembling. You'll see what they did to her. My stomach dropped. I opened my mouth to protest, but it was too late. He turned the screen toward me. I didn't process what I was seeing right away, just shapes and colors. Then it clicked. Flesh. Raw, infected. Oh my God. I whispered, turning my head away. He leaned closer, shaking visibly. They let her rot. Look at that. You see what they did? I swallowed hard, tried to keep my voice steady. She needs medical care, I said firmly. Those are infected. She could go septic if she doesn't get treatment. That word, infected, set something off in him. His expression twisted, eyes narrowing like I'd just insulted him. You think I don't know that? He shouted. You think I didn't try? They laughed at us. They said she's fine. All you nurses are the same. You cover for each other. You protect your own. I wanted to shrink into the seat. People were staring now, but no one moved. The woman behind the counter whispered into a phone, probably calling someone, though it didn't sound urgent. Sir, I said softly, please lower your voice. I'm not. He slammed his fist on my table, so hard my drink toppled, spilling soda across the napkins. I flinched. The entire restaurant went silent. Don't tell me what to do, he hissed. You don't get to order me around. Then, in a sudden shift that made my blood run cold, his face softened. I'm sorry, he murmured. I didn't mean to scare you. It's just, I can't stand seeing her like this. He turned toward Denise, his expression melting into pity. Show her, he said quietly. She looked confused. What? Show her, he repeated, louder this time. She needs to see. She's a nurse, she'll understand. Before I could react, the woman began fumbling with her clothes. Wait, please don't, I said, standing halfway up, but she'd already pulled down the waistband of her sweatpants. The sight made my brain short-circuit. There, right beside my tray, she exposed a patch of swollen, ulcerated skin, sores crusted and bleeding through layers of gauze that looked days old. Stop, I said, louder than I intended. Pull those back up, please. The man's breathing grew erratic. You see what they did to her, he shouted. You see why I can't take it anymore. He slammed his fist again, once, twice, the sound echoing through the tiled walls. No one cares. You all just watch while people die. The cashier ducked behind the counter. Somewhere near the soda machine, someone muttered, "Call the cops." Denise was crying now, hands trembling as she pulled her pants back up. "Mark, please," she whispered. "Stop yelling." But he wasn't listening. His eyes darted around the room like he was searching for invisible enemies. Then his voice dropped to a whisper, almost to himself. "They'll pay for this," he said. "Every one of them." He started pacing, muttering words I couldn't catch, his hands clenching and unclenching like he was fighting himself. I knew I needed to get out. Slowly, carefully, I grabbed my bag from the seat beside me. I'm sorry," I said, forcing a nervous smile. "I have to clock in soon. I hope you find someone who can help." He turned sharply, eyes blazing. "You can help," he said. "You're one of them. You know what they do. You could tell the truth." Yes, but I have to go. I'll be late," I said, inching toward the exit. For a tense few seconds, he just stared at me. Then, like a switch flipped, he started laughing. Not a normal laugh. A hollow, broken sound that sent chills down my spine. "Late for what?" he said between laughs, saving another one of them. I didn't answer. I just kept walking. My hand was shaking so hard I nearly dropped my keys. When I finally pushed open the door, the rush of cold air felt like oxygen after drowning. I half ran across the street to the hospital, heart pounding, eyes darting to every reflection in the glass doors behind me. I went straight to the security desk, still shaking. The guard called the police, but by the time they arrived, the man and woman were gone. Later, one of the officers told me they'd checked nearby shelters. No one matching their descriptions had checked in. Just two anonymous people lost somewhere in the city, swallowed up by it like it happens every day. That night, I couldn't eat. I kept replaying the man's face, the wildness in his eyes, the cracks in his voice when he went from rage to despair and a heartbeat. I'd seen psychiatric breaks before, but never that close. Never directed at me. I started avoiding that subway after that. Walked the long way around the block instead, even when it was freezing. A week later, a coworker mentioned seeing police tape near that same core one morning. Some guy had an episode in a fast food place, she said casually. Started smashing windows, screaming about doctors. They took him in for evaluation. I asked which place, pretending it didn't matter. She said, "Subway, I think. The one across from the hospital." I nodded, said nothing, and went back to charting. Even now, years later, I still think about that morning. About how fast things spiral from normal to nightmare. About how no one in that restaurant really moved until it was over. Maybe that's what unsettles me most. Not just him, but the silence of everyone else. The way fear makes us freeze, pretending if we look away, the danger can't reach us. I tell my nursing students now, compassion doesn't mean getting involved in every situation. Sometimes survival is its own kind of wisdom, but deep down, I still carry that image. The corner booth, the shaking hands, the sound of his laughter turning into sobs. Every time I pass a subway sign, I remember that morning in fragments. The smell of bread, the buzzing lights, the laptop surrounded by trash bags. And I remember thinking how fragile reality can be, how easily it can tilt from routine to something you'll never forget. All because someone sat down across from you, and you didn't yet know they were about to break. I've worked at the same subway in Northern California since I was 16. It's one of those small locations tucked into a gas station lot. Fluorescent lights, faded posters of sandwiches no one ever orders, and a soda machine that's been half broken for as long as I can remember. We close at 11, but sometimes the owner, Malik, lets me lock up on my own if the evening's slow. I've always liked the quiet after hours, the hum of the refrigerators and the smell of bread still lingering in the air. It feels safe, controlled. My name's Jamie, by the way. I'm 19 now, still at Jubbling Community College and this job. The night I'm about to tell you about happened last February. It was raining lightly, just that misty kind of drizzle that clings to your jacket. I remember because the parking lot lights were reflecting off the wet pavement, and it looked almost peaceful when I pulled in. I didn't know then how long that sense of calm would last. I was working the evening shift with my coworker, Marisol. She's 21, the kind of person who laughs easily and talks to every customer like their friend. We'd been slow most of the night, just a few regulars and one guy who kept asking if we had real meatballs, or the fake kind. It was almost 10 when the door chime began. The man who walked in was hard to miss, big, at least 6 feet tall, and easily over 200 pounds. Early 20s maybe, but his face looked older in a way that comes from not taking care of yourself. His hoodie was stained, his hair stringy under a flat brim cap, and his eyes, something about them just made my stomach twist. They didn't blink enough. Marisol greeted him first, because I was finishing a mobile order at the register. "Hey there, what can I get started for you?" she asked, smiling like she always did. He didn't answer right away. He was looking past her, at me. I felt it before I even looked up. That direct kind of stare that you can feel on your skin. When I met his eyes for half a second, he smiled, this slow, uneven curve that didn't reach his eyes. Foot-long turkey," he said finally, still looking at me while Marisol started on the bread. I pretended to check the receipt printer, even though there was nothing printing. My pulse had already started to pick up, and I couldn't explain why. I get plenty of weird customers, drunk guys, impatient ones, people who flirt awkwardly. You learn to smile and move on. But this felt different. His eyes didn't wander. They pinned me down like I was the only thing in the room worth noticing. I tried to ignore him, focusing on wiping the counter and making myself busy. But from the corner of my eye, I saw that he never looked away. Not once. Even while Marisol added toppings, he stood there silently watching me. When she rang him up, I stepped into the back under the pretense of checking the bread oven. I stayed there longer than necessary, counting seconds. Eventually, I heard the door chime. Relief. Marisol peeked into the back. "He's gone," she said with a half smile. "Weirdo. You okay?" "Yeah," I said, forcing a laugh. "Just tired." We started closing up, wiping tables, restocking chips. At 10:30, she clocked out and headed home. "You sure you're good to finish?" she asked. "Yeah, it's fine. Go ahead." She left, and the silence that followed was heavier than usual. I locked the door after her and went back to cleaning, humming quietly to break the quiet. 15 minutes later, I was sweeping near the soda fountain when I saw movement through the window. My heart jumped, but it was just the reflection of headlights turning in. Still, I kept glancing up. Habit. That's when I saw him. He was standing outside again, by the window, near the corner booth, the one right across from where I was. His hood was up now, rain glistening off the fabric. He wasn't holding food, wasn't on his phone, just standing there, looking in. At first, I thought maybe he was waiting for someone, maybe his ride. But then he smiled, just slightly, and I realized he wasn't waiting at all. He was watching. I froze, broom still in hand. He noticed because the smile grew. Then, slowly, he stepped closer to the glass. My stomach dropped. I backed away from the window and moved toward the back hallway. I wasn't sure what to do. He hadn't technically done anything illegal, but the sight of him there, motionless except for the rain streaking down the glass, made something in me want to run. I reached for my phone to text Marisol, but before I could, I heard the chime of the door. He'd come back in. I hadn't unlocked it. I was sure of that, but sometimes the latch sticks. I cursed under my breath as he walked in, shaking rain from his sleeves. "Hey," he said casually, like we were old friends. "Forgot my wallet earlier." It was a lie. I'd seen him pay with cash. I swallowed. "Oh, okay. Did you drop it somewhere?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked toward one of the tables, farther than he needed to go if he were just looking around. His footsteps echoed softly against the tile. Then he stopped in the center of the room, turned, and looked at me again. That same half smile, the kind that feels like a threat wearing politeness as a mask. I took a step back toward the counter. "I can help you look if you tell me where you were sitting." He tilted his head. "You were here earlier too, right?" "Yeah," I said carefully. "I work nights." He nodded slowly. "You seem nice." My throat went dry. "Thanks," I said flatly, keeping my eyes on the clock above the register. 10:52. 8 minutes. He didn't move, just stood there, watching. Then, after what felt like forever, he walked toward the door again. I stayed still, every muscle tensed, waiting for him to leave. But when he reached the door, he didn't go out. He just stood there, looking at his reflection in the glass. Then he laughed. A low, weird laugh that didn't sound real. "Guess I didn't drop it after all," he said, and then he stepped outside. The door swung shut behind him, But he didn't leave. He stayed by the window again, peering in while pretending to scroll on his phone. That was it. I grabbed my phone, called Malik, and told him there was a guy hanging around making me uncomfortable. Malik said he'd call the police, but that it might take a while. I didn't wait. I went into the back, locked the office door, and crouched near the tiny window that faced the alley. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped the phone twice. After a few minutes, I peeked back out. He was gone. The police arrived about 15 minutes later. I gave them the description, showed them the footage from the security camera. They said they'd patrolled the area, but that he hadn't technically done anything they could charge him for. That's what always gets me. The way fear has to reach a certain threshold before it counts. I got home close to midnight, still wired with adrenaline. I checked my phone obsessively, expecting another shoe to drop. Nothing. For the next few nights, every sound at work made me jump. The chime of the door, the rumble of cars outside. I even asked Malik to install a better lock on the entrance, but he brushed it off. Then, a week later, Marisol texted me around closing time. "Hey, work question. Did that guy from the other night ever come back?" I told her no. She sent a picture she'd taken from her car in the parking lot earlier that evening. It was blurry, but I recognized the hoodie, the shape, the posture. He was standing near the dumpster at the edge of the lot, half hidden behind the fence. "Pretty sure that's him," she wrote. He was watching the store again. I didn't finish my shift that night. I locked up early, heart pounding the whole drive home. I haven't seen him since, but sometimes when I work late, I still catch myself checking the windows every few minutes, half expecting that face to appear again. It's strange how fear lingers, not in the moment itself, but in the quiet that comes after. You think you're fine, that you've moved on, but then a reflection catches your eye, or a car idles too long outside, and suddenly you're back there again, watching, waiting, wishing you'd never looked up in the first place. Now, every night before closing, I do one last sweep of the store, pretending it's just for safety. But really I'm searching, making sure the windows stay empty, making sure the world outside still feels like something I can lock out. The story starts like 100 others in a town that never fully recovered from its past. Aurora, Colorado isn't small. Not anymore. But for people who grew up there, the weight of its history still sits heavy. There's a kind of quiet grief that hangs over certain corners of that city. People don't talk about it directly. They just avoid the subject. Or the places. The subway on Alameda and Vaughn was one of those places. It's still open, technically, but only because of how cheap the rent is and how stubborn the franchise owner is about keeping it going. If you walk by now, the lights flicker and the smell of bread never fully covers the mildew. There's a new crew working there, but older locals glance at it differently. Everyone knows what happened, even if most pretend not to. I was 16 when the murders happened. My name's Drew, and back then I used to ride my bike past that subway every day on my way to school. I didn't know the victims personally, but I knew of them. Everyone did. Their names were Corey Bennett and Maria Davis. Corey was 21, tall and quiet, with that calm kind of demeanor that made people trust him instantly. He'd gone to the same high school I did, just a few years ahead of me. People said he was one of the good ones. Never partied, helped teachers after class, volunteered with the baseball team. Maria was 19, smart, funny, the kind of girl who turned any dull room into a lighter one. They'd been dating for almost a year. The two of them were working the closing shift that night, February 12th, 2001. The official report says they were shot sometime between 11:30 p.m. and midnight. The store closed at 11, but like most fast food workers know, closing doesn't mean you leave. You clean, you count cash, you restock. By the time you're done, it's close to midnight. Their manager, a guy named Phil, found them around 2 a.m. He said he stopped by to grab paperwork he'd left behind earlier. When he opened the back door, the lights were still on, the radio still playing. The register was untouched, but the place was silent. Corey was behind the counter, slumped over, while Maria was near the front, as if she'd tried to run. Both were shot multiple times. The worst part, the security camera system had been turned off. The case never made national headlines, not like other tragedies. But here, it was the only thing people talked about for months. The local paper ran stories about it for years, every anniversary without fail. Everyone had their own theory. The first one was robbery. It made sense at first glance. Fast food joints get robbed all the time, but no money was missing. The register drawer was open, but nothing taken. If it was a robbery, it was the sloppiest one imaginable. Then came the idea of a personal motive. Maria's ex-boyfriend was questioned early on. People whispered that he had anger issues, that he'd been jealous of Corey, but he had an airtight alibi. He was in another state for a construction job at the time. The detectives combed through everyone connected to the two victims. Friends, co-workers, even old classmates. Nothing stuck. The third theory, the one no one liked to say out loud, was that it had something to do with drugs. Subway wasn't exactly a hub for that kind of thing, but rumor had it some of the night shifts had become a place for low-level dealers to exchange product. The back door was discreet, the manager didn't keep track of comings and goings, and the late hours made it easy. Some claimed Corey found out and was planning to tell corporate. Others said Maria was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. That idea made people uncomfortable. It didn't fit the image of who they were. But in 2002, the Aurora PD released a statement saying the store may have been associated with ongoing narcotics activity, though they didn't link the victims directly to it. The lead detective, a man named Keller, said in an interview, "Sometimes the wrong people see the wrong things." That quote still circulates in local Facebook groups. The last theory was the one that haunted me the most. The idea that it was someone they knew, someone from their high school years, someone who'd survived something similar to what they did. You see, Corey and Maria were both students at Lincoln High when a shooting happened there in 1999. It never reached the level of national coverage like Columbine, but it rattled the city. A senior brought a gun into school after being expelled. 2 people died. One of them was Maria's best friend. Corey was in the same hallway. They both carried that trauma for years. And maybe, just maybe, so did someone else. Police questioned one former student, Dylan Moore, who'd been seen hanging around near the shop weeks before the murders. He'd gone through therapy with Corey after the Lincoln shooting, but had since dropped off the radar. He denied involvement. He said he was only there because Subway was where the best bread smell in town was. Then, weeks after his interview, Dylan moved out of state. No forwarding address. The case stayed open. No arrests. No suspects. Just shadows and silence. 20 years later, in 2021, local news outlets did a feature on Colorado's coldest cases. Corey and Maria's story resurfaced. For the first time, police admitted they received multiple tips in 2020 from people claiming they'd overheard someone bragging about the killings years earlier. But by the time they traced the tips, the alleged suspect had already died. I still think about that Subway sometimes. I drive by it when I visit my mom's place. It looks mostly the same. Yellow signage faded from the sun. The same cracked parking lot. The inside was remodeled. New tiles, new counters, new cameras. But if you look closely at the back wall, there's a small section where the paint is slightly darker, like something was once scrubbed off. Some nights when the air's still and the traffic's light, you can almost imagine what that night sounded like. The hum of the cooler, the squeak of shoes on tile, the last ring of the door chime before everything went quiet. Corey's younger brother, Nate, still posts about him on social media every February. His messages are always short, still waiting for justice. One of them reads, "We know you didn't deserve that." And maybe that's all there is left of the story. Waiting for someone to confess, or slip up, or finally tell the truth. People like to call it the Subway murders, but locals still say the closing shift. It's quieter, Feels less sensational, more human. Because at the heart of it, that's all it was. Two kids trying to make it through another night at work, counting cash and cleaning counters, in a city that never quite stopped carrying its ghosts. I didn't know them, not really, but I remember the faces from yearbook pages and the way everyone talked about them like they were golden. Maybe that's why it still hurts, even now. Because the people who survive one tragedy aren't supposed to fall into another. Every once in a while, someone claims they saw something that night. A flash of light, a car parked too long, a stranger waiting at the corner. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's memory reshaping itself after too many years of wanting answers. But I know this much. The camera wasn't broken. It was turned off, deliberately. And whoever did that knew exactly when to pull the plug.